What's up, guys? Today on Sports Center, I'm going to be going over my 2019 Week 2 rankings for the college football season. And this week, Week 1 was kind of an inactive one. Of course, everyone played, but most of the games really aren't going to have much of a factor on the rankings here this week. But yeah, we did have the Auburn and Oregon game. That's going to change up some things, and also kind of down lower in the rankings a little bit. It's where we're going to see most of the changes. Basically, just between teams that had closer games than they should have been. A good example would be Iowa State, Northern Iowa. But yeah, we'll get back to that in a little bit. Starting off with 1 through 7, we got the same thing as last week: Clemson, Alabama. We got Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, LSU, and Michigan. And all of these teams did win their games this week. Clemson had an easy one against Georgia Tech. Same thing for Alabama. And then Georgia had a closer game against Vanderbilt, which probably should have been a little bit. Well, actually, honestly, it was still a great win for Georgia nonetheless with it being on the road. Yeah, then Ohio State with Florida Atlantic, good win there. Same thing with Oklahoma and Houston. I considered putting Oklahoma at number 4. In the AP poll, they do have Oklahoma at 4, but I think Ohio State's a little bit better than Oklahoma, and I'm going to keep it that way for this week as well. LSU's number 6, Michigan is number 7. And I consider moving Michigan down to number 8 as well, which number 8 for me is Texas. And moving Texas up because I was more impressed with Texas in Week 1 than Michigan. But then in the end, I'm going to keep Texas there just because, all of the other polls have them a little bit lower. And, of course, when you got Florida, it's kind of tough to do that. But, yeah, Florida's my number 9. I moved them down after Week 0. I had Week 0 rankings as well. And so, yeah, I moved them down after that Miami game. And so that's why now they're at number 9. And they're going to stay the same going into Week 2. Auburn has moved up 6 positions to number 10 after their win against Oregon. And honestly, I thought about putting them possibly 11 or 12. But the thing is, though, that was still a great win. And a win is a win for Auburn, of course. I think, honestly, though, Oregon should have won that game. There were many cases where Oregon kind of they made mistakes where if they didn't make the mistake, the easy, simple mistakes, Oregon would have won that game. Yeah, in the end, Auburn still won it. They got it done, so they're going to be my number 10. Texas A&M is number 11. They played Texas State. They're going up 1. And Penn State's doing the same. They're going up 1 as well after dropping 79 points on Idaho. But Notre Dame is going down. I'm moving them to number 13, actually. I think they're number 8 in the AP poll. But I'm not very impressed in this Notre Dame team. I haven't been since the season's start. We saw them in the playoff last year. This isn't a team that can win a national championship right now. And I doubt that they'll be able to this season as well. But yeah, Notre Dame's my number 13. They're an independent. And they got many tests on their schedule, though. So that's for sure going to be able to determine whether this team is for real or not. But yeah, I was not impressed by their win at Louisville. I don't understand why they even moved up in the AP poll after that one. That is not a top 10 team playing there against Louisville last week. But I'll tell you what could be is Utah. Utah played at BYU last week. They're going up 1. They swapped spots with Washington. I was kind of impressed. I was very impressed, actually, with Utah's win over BYU. I thought BYU could have a chance to pull off an upset there, but Utah shut them down and won it by about 20. Washington played Eastern Washington and nothing against them. They moved them down. That was still a great win against Eastern Washington, but I was just more impressed with Utah than I was Washington last week. Wisconsin's a team that easily could have jumped both Washington and Utah, but I didn't decide to have them do that. They played at South Florida, and they were very impressive. They shut them out on the road, and I thought South Florida could have been a team to possibly pull an upset there, and that never happened. But yeah, Wisconsin definitely, I think, is a team to watch out for. Especially after that performance that they had last week. Wisconsin's going to be a team to watch out for, especially in the Big Ten. Oregon is going to be my number 17. They're dropping the most in this poll, or in my poll for this. They are going down 7 after that loss against Auburn. They're the only 0-1 team in the rankings this season, this week. And then number 18 is Michigan State. They played Tulsa. They kind of had an average win there, nothing too excellent or exciting. So yeah, they're starting at 18. And same thing for UCF and Iowa. I'm not moving them up anywhere. UCF had a pretty impressive win too, but then again, it was Florida A&M. So still, that's not a very impressive win there. But UCF still looked pretty good in that game. But they're going to stay at 19. Iowa's going to stay at 20. They play Miami, Ohio. Got an easy win there. New Mexico State is who Washington State played. and they put up a pretty impressive performance there. They're going to move up 2, and also I had Northwestern actually at 21 last week, and they dropped out of the rankings, so that's another spot that Washington State can take over. So they moved up into the higher 20s. But now looking at your final 4 in the rankings, you got Syracuse. They played at Liberty, and they put up a pretty impressive performance. I think they shut them out as well. And so they've entered the rankings this week. I had them in my week 0 rankings. I dropped them out for week 1. But yeah, they're back in it for week 2. So but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Syracuse does. I think they play Maryland this week. And of course, Maryland, I mean, they dropped 79 on Howard. Now I understand it was Howard, but still 79-0. That is a pretty impressive win for a team like Maryland. And so for Syracuse, you do not want to sleep on that game. That's going to be an interesting one with it being on the road. Syracuse needs to be able to come to play that day. Stanford's my number 23. They played against Northwestern and beat them at home 17-7. They're going up 2 in the rankings. They were 25 last week. Boise State had a very impressive win against Florida State. Came back and won that one. I did not expect that to happen. That should actually say at Florida State. That was not a home game for Boise State. But yeah, that was a very, very impressive win there by Boise State. So that's why they're in the rankings this week at 24. Then Nebraska is just a round off the rankings at 25. They played South Alabama, and it was a sort of impressive win, but nothing too crazy. They moved down 1 from 24 last week, and this week they've got Colorado. So that'll be an interesting one for Nebraska as well. I mean, with it being on the road, this will be a time where Nebraska needs to show that they are worthy of being a top 25 team. Their first 5 out, Iowa State is just on the edge. I consider putting them at 25 and bumping Nebraska down to the first one out, but I'm moving Iowa State to 26 here. They are just outside of it, but whoever teams plays better out of Iowa State and Nebraska is easily going to be back in the pool next week. Virginia is number 27, Mississippi State's 28, TCU 29, and Cincinnati is 30. Cincinnati had an impressive win against UCLA last week, and I mean, I kind of thought, they looked pretty good there. Even though it's UCLA, probably one of the worst Power 5 conference teams, it was still a pretty impressive win there on the road. Yeah, TCU, of course, and then Mississippi State, pretty good SEC team. They had kind of a bumpy last week. But yeah, then you got Virginia and Iowa State. And Iowa State dropped out of the rankings from last week. They were 22 in week 1. And so they dropped 4 spots down to 26. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts, though, on these rankings in the comments below. Did I get something wrong? I'm sure I did in most of your guys' minds. So be sure to tell me where I went wrong. Do you think Nebraska should be out of the rankings? I've heard a few people talking about how Nebraska should be out. They should not be still in it. But I've got a lot of hope in that team. I think that's going to be a good team this season. I mean, same as Stanford kind of surprised me last week. I thought Northwestern could have pulled an upset easily there. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts, though, on these rankings in the comments below. Is there anything that you would change? Do you think any of the first 5 out should be in the rankings? Be sure to let me know that. But yeah, if you like this video, be sure to show some support on it. All of it is very appreciated. And be sure to stay tuned for more from All Sports Central.